Give me a second here, guys. I had everything ready to go and laid down on the couch for a few minutes and fell asleep and just woke up like literally 30 seconds ago. So, all right, let's see here. Oh, okay. Well, looks like everybody's here, including the cobwebs in my head. I thought I should turn an alarm on, and I thought I don't need that. I'm just going to lay here for a few minutes. I'll be fine. And then literally at 3:59, anyway. Oh, still trying to shake the fuzzies out. Yeah, so we'll go through the your assignments again. This time, I talk too much. This time, you guys are going to talk. Instead of me looking at your images and telling you what I think, you're going to tell me what you did and why you did it. I mean, even though a lot of it's pretty simple to figure out, I want to hear from you a little bit more this week than me. So let me get over to that screen. All right. Looks like Beth is up first. So when I opened the folder and I saw this image, I thought, what? Like, what is it that you were trying to do? So then I saw this one, which we'll talk about in a second. And then I saw, okay, so you have a PSD version of this. And then you have the cartoon version. So I'm assuming the cartoon version is the inspiration for this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about, let's look. I didn't open up your PSD, but I should do that. I want to see what you've got here. Okay, so you've got, try to get, there we go. You've got all the layers intact. So let me just strip it down and we'll look one layer at a time. Oh, so we have our shadow layer. All right. Okay, I was gonna say I thought I was missing a layer, but I think I've got them all. All right, so tell me how, what, why.
Okay, so the drawing, that was like one of my favorite pictures as a kid. It was in like a Pokemon book. So I looked at it all the time. So instead of using a cartoon boy, I used a real boy. And that's my brother.
And so he was game for this, or did he even know what you were doing?
No, he knew what I was doing. He knows.
So your original image, you did brighten this up in the PSD version because it's definitely under. However, it's underexposed. I would have probably done it on the raw file before bringing it over because it would have given you a good bit more to work with because there's it's under pretty significantly, like stop and a half at least. Let me get this. Yeah, maybe more. Let me pull this up. Maybe almost two, and probably would help to pull back on the saturation a little bit. Yeah, so that's before and after on the raw file. So you did brighten it up in the composite, but you probably would have had a little bit better, a little less noise in the image, a little bit better quality if you'd done it on the raw file. I'm going to cancel out of that. With that being said, it was a pretty good idea as far as I never expected anyone to do cartoons. So you took the drawing, you actually clipped each figure out of the original, right? And then pasted it in. So I would say, if I'm gonna critique a little bit, so again, I still think your subject is a little bit underexposed. I also think that although you were smart enough to bring in the shadows, I think the shadows need a little bit of work, especially the one, oh, there it is, the contact shadow. So you've got these soft shadows, like this one makes sense, okay, because you've kind of got the dragon is up in the air a little bit, so it's not going to really cast a hard-edged shadow. It's probably a little strong for what it should be. Let me go to your shadow layer here. So let me play, I'm going to play with it a little bit and see if I can do anything to what you have without replacing it entirely. Let's just see if we can. All right, so I'm going to put a layer mask on your shadow layer so that I can do a little bit of work. So I've got a paintbrush at 25% opacity, so I can just sort of, I'm going to brush along the edges of your shadow here. Probably, I could drop the opacity of the whole layer, but I think I need it on the other parts over here. It's probably just a little bit strong underneath the dragon, because I think, I don't know, I think the shadow would be a little bit weaker there, obviously, than it would be anywhere else, because almost everything else has a lot of has contact with the background. But I want to soften the edges of that up a little bit. And then I think the only other thing is probably under your brother's shoes, because it does still have a look like he's, sort of floating out there. So I think, and I haven't done this, but I'm going to guess that if I keep that paintbrush at about 25% and just go in, yeah, I'm on the layer now, and paint right along the bottom. Not sure why I'm not seeing a lot here. Looking at your layer, it's 100% opacity. It's normal blending mode. All right, it is actually doing something. It's just doing it slowly. So let me just bring the opacity of the brush up a little bit. And again, because we're underneath that layer, I don't have to worry about any of this paint getting on his shoes. It's not gonna happen. I guess because probably we have some shadow there to start with. I'm not really seeing a whole lot there. Let me paint some of this out. Yeah, that's doing it a little bit, because I wasn't seeing a whole lot of the effect that I was painting. Let's do a little bit more. I think this foot especially looks a little better. I'm still surprised that I'm not seeing, yeah, it's just not as strong. I painted there quite a bit and it's not coming through that strong. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put another layer. I'm going to start, whenever this happens, when you're working on something and it's just not quite having the effect that you want, I still don't know exactly the reason, but for some reason that what I'm painting isn't showing up a whole lot. So I'm going to try a new layer. All right, so I'm definitely seeing more there. And then I'll just paint out a little piece right in there. I just want to keep that contact shadow shouldn't extend very far down below the feet, because then again, it's going to look like there's more distance there than there should be. And let's take, let me add an adjustment layer above that, so just to brighten everything a little bit more. Yeah, wow, look at your histogram here. Of course, we're not taking into effect a lot of this stuff, but let's brighten it up. That'll let us see the effect of that shadow a little bit more. Yeah, and I still think I want to bring it in a little tighter to his feet. But now when we back it off, it has a little bit more of a realistic look underneath. Let me do a snapshot here. So this is where we started, and that's where we are now. I can actually see a little bit of a contact shadow under his feet, which there would be. Even in soft lighting, you're still going to have a pretty strong, anytime something's in contact with the ground or the background or whatever, it's going to have a pretty strong effect. And what I was seeing on your shadows here was pretty heavy-handed, but it wasn't defined really well, or as well as it should have been. Like I said, I'm giving you credit for doing the shadows at all, because I think that's probably the biggest mistake that most people make in something like this, is not adding them in. But I felt like they were a little bit clunky, I guess is the best word to use. Yeah, clunky shadows. But overall, I'm trying to drop this. It's funny when I'm sharing my screen, a lot of my keyboard shortcuts either don't work or they only work a little bit. Yeah, I still think he needs a little bit of brightening, which you have a brightness layer just on him, and that's good. It's I like that you've figured out how to clip that to just that layer. I think I would definitely make it a little stronger though. Brightness and contrast, I'll tell you also, is not the best. Yeah, it's one of the lower quality ways of adjusting a file. It doesn't give you quite as much control. I did, like I said, I love the fact that you clipped it to his layer, but I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer. Levels and curves are going to give you more, same thing. I've clipped it to him, so it's only going to affect him. But now I can control the highlights, midtones, and shadows separately, because if I pull back on the highlights and midtones, I'm probably going to need to compensate a little bit by pulling up on the shadows. Let's see that. So that's my adjustment, and that one was yours. I think yours was not too bad. It just needed to go a little further. If he's going to match, especially if he's going to match the cartoon characters, because they're kind of bright for the most part, like the three that are near his feet, especially, or the four that are near him, they're really kind of bright. And without that, I mean, you did see that obviously because you put this in, but I think it probably should have gone just a little bit further than that. Let me do a snapshot of that. Yeah, so that's your original version. And again, I don't know how you're viewing it, because different screens, the calibration on different screens are going to be completely different. It may look better to you this way than it does this way, but on my screen, it needed a good bit more brightness in certain areas, and that looks pretty good. But anyway, I'm really being nitpicky here, because that's my job is to do that. But I think overall, let me get back to the images in Bridge. I think overall, what you did for what you started with, the concept was really cool. The execution was pretty good. It just lacked a couple little things, but yeah, to go from there to there, to clip out, it took a little bit of work to clip those out, I'm sure. How did you, what tools did you use to pull those cartoon characters out of the original?
I just used the quick selection tool.
Yeah, I think that would have worked pretty well. It should have worked pretty well on most of them because
Mhm.
as I look, there's a lot of contrast there between those characters in the background. You even found a background that was pretty similar to what was in the original, so that's cute. And I just noticed, I'm just looking here. Yeah, I just noticed that you have something over his shoulder as well, like a little backpack or some kind of a pouch or something, just like in the original. He's dressed kind of similarly. So you spent some time. It looks like you were like you didn't just say, "Hey, come here, let me take a picture." You actually outfitted him to match that original as much as you could.
I tried.
So I think the only thing I think that would have been like if I'd seen it, I would have been like perfect. No, I think if the dragon was spewing fire at him and he was on fire, that would be really cool. Because it looks like the dragon's about to fling fire at him anyway. It's cute. I mean, I'm just looking to see if there's any other suggestions I can make, but yeah, pretty much. I think the more I look at it, the more I see the effort that you put into it. I still do think the shadows, were the weakest part. They probably needed a little bit of work, and his image needed to be a little brighter. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with what you did with the idea from the original. So pretty cool. All right, let's get a folder here. And your JPEG is that one. Nope, hang on, I want to see something else here. I'm seeing something on one of your characters here, and I'm not sure what it is. Do you see what I'm seeing? This
Yeah, the
little.
little like funky stuff. Yeah, it's like I tried to do the select and mask thing, and it kept wanting like on the grass at the bottom, and it kept wanting to select more, and I couldn't get it off after a while.
I'm just looking to see because if you turn everything off and then start adding them one at a time, it'll show you where that problem came from. There. Oh, okay. So that was the grass. So what you would have needed to do would be to mask that layer a little bit. If I put a mask on there and just take a black paintbrush, it should, yeah, it comes right off. So you did sort of an automatic masking, and it just required a little bit more. Even still, it still looks a little. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. It pretty much got it all off. Let me see this layer. So you have a hole in this layer. I'm not sure what this is. There must have been something on the original. And it's a very dark layer too. Why am I not seeing, like with everything turned off, it says brightness contrast copy. Not really figuring out how you achieved what you did there. I don't know. I'm not sure what this layer, let me turn that off. I'm not sure exactly what this layer is doing. Help me out here. Because that's the image without that layer on there. And when I turn it on, all I'm seeing is it's darkening the foreground a little bit. Was that the intent or?
Because if I didn't have that, like the grass kind of went under him, and I thought it looked weird.
Oh, so you were using that to
Try to make,
mask, to
yeah.
get
So
rid of some of that. Okay. Yeah, I'm still not really sure how what it is that you did on that layer to do that, but at least I understand the idea and why you did it now. All right, no problem. Let me close this up. So anyway, you probably win the award this week for the most whimsical image. Well, I don't know. There's another one or two here that are pretty interesting too. Um, I think probably, like I said, the more I looked at this, the more I could see the amount of effort that went into it and the things that you did on the front end to put it together. So yeah, good job on that. And you did a pretty good job of clipping out your characters too. I just wanted to, try to clean up a few things for you so that the next time you put something like this together, um, you wouldn't have some of the issues that you did. But they were pretty minor. All right. Pokemon Shiny. What's the third word there?
that's a Charizard.
Charizard. Okay. So, not being a Pokemon fan, I don't know what these things are. So, I just had to ask. That's all. All right. Man, I'm old. But I could throw a few things at you that you guys wouldn't know either. All right, Haley, let's see what Haley's got here. So I'm going to save the bottom two. Walk me through, uh, let me see if I have this right, first of all. All right, so we have a series of images here that I'm not sure. The first ones, I mean, the bottom ones, I think I can figure out, but tell me what we've got. These are standalone images, right? They're not,
Well,
well, that,
this one is just a standalone image. A bunch of them are panoramas. I wasn't
gotcha.
even supposed to take these photos, or not supposed to take these photos. I was actually supposed to go to a different area, and I ended up here just because I accidentally parked in the wrong area. And I was like, screw it, I'll just take photos here. So, so yeah.
So
And
that's a
then,
panorama.
yeah, that's a panorama.
Okay.
The reason it's red and it's called Hidden Grave is because I looked all around this area, and right before I left, I checked that one. Like, you see the tree that's like cut off? There's like bones right
Yeah.
by that tree, and I was like, "Oh, that's weird." I
There
think
are,
it's just bird bones, but it kind of
oh,
creeped me out at first. That's why I like made it red.
interesting. Bones. Yeah, well, my girlfriend found in my backyard last weekend, she found a 4-point antler about that big, like like it's literally has just come off like recently. A couple years ago, and way down in the backyard, I found a complete deer skull just laying in the backyard. Not sure what,
Wow.
some kind of an animal obviously skeletonized that, but it was just the head. Like why was there just a head? Like I, I have no idea. So the bones must have been pretty small that were there.
Yeah, you can't really see him in that picture. I do have a picture of him, but I spared you from seeing him.
So tell me what this is. Was this also a panorama?
The top one, I don't think the top one was. I think it was just a standalone image. I just thought it was kind of like cool that it was framing the tire. with
Yeah,
the tree.
in that square area in the center. Gotcha. Yeah, and it sort of doesn't belong there, right? Like everything else is kind of, you know, the same, and then this tire's just laying out there. This one's interesting. I like the tone of it, the color of it reminds me of something, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Something I've seen before in film, and it's not coming to me right now, but it does definitely remind me of a scene in a movie or something that I've seen, but I can't figure out. It looks like it was pretty crappy out there, like pretty marshy.
A little bit.
All right, so what do we have? What is this one?
Hold on. The screen is still on the red picture for me. You talking about the one right behind, right under it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's also just panorama. I just thought this was the greener side of the forest. Like it was very muddy on the other side. This was the green area. So
Yeah, I can like this one, the format of it does tell me that it's panorama. This one I would not have guessed that because it has you know, it has a fairly normal aspect ratio. This one definitely looks in that ratio. So I'm guessing that that's what this one is as well. I think you've got some interesting tree leans and things like that going on, which kind of, you know, frames the center of the picture, which is interesting. Has anybody ever seen, it kind of reminds me of, there's an old movie. Oh God, it was probably done in the 60s, but it's sort of had this cult following. So it's been shown over and over and over again. It's still on television every once in a while. It's called It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Has anybody seen that? It is hilarious. It is first of all, it was back in the days when you could have a cast in a movie that didn't just have one or two main stars. This one had like all 12 characters or however many there were all blockbuster comedy actors, you know, back in the day. They weren't all comedy, some were more dramatic. But Jonathan Winters and oh my God, Jim Backus. I can't even think of the women now, but there were about 12. What's the other one? Buddy Hackett. I'm sure you've at least heard the name if you're not quite sure who he is. Buddy Hackett was the guy in the movie back in the 60s called The Love Bug, or Herbie the Love Bug. It was a little Volkswagen bug. They made a couple of movies, and he was the guy in that. But he did. Jonathan
oh,
Winters was. What's that?
I was just gonna say that's funny. I should have sent you the picture with my bug in it because I have a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, the reason that it even brings this to mind is that the premise of this movie is that all of these people are in separate cars. They don't know each other. There might be two or three people in a car, and they're all on this mountain road. And a car in front of them goes over the cliff and rolls over, and they all get out to come down and see if they can help. And the guy's been thrown out of the vehicle, and he's about to die. But before he dies, he tells them all about this huge sum of money that's buried. He tells them the city that it's buried in under the Big W. He's like, go to Pasadena or whatever, and it's buried under the Big W. And then he dies, you know, and the cops come, and they all sort of are wandering back up the hill, and they're like, oh, you know, do you think there was anything to that? And everybody's like, oh no, he was just, you know, he wasn't coherent at all. I'm sure there's nothing to it. But yet they all get back in their cars, and they're like, if there's money there, you know, we're going to go find it. So they're hundreds of miles from wherever this is, if not further. And it's a race. The movie becomes a race between all these people to try to get to the Big W to find this money. And they, you know, they become animals. Like they do things to each other to try to sabotage each other. It is an absolutely hilarious movie. But at the end, they get to this park where he tells them that the money is, and they're searching for the Big W, and they're running back and forth. And there's this one scene, the camera angle is, you know, shooting a background like this, and they're running into the scene and out of the scene, and they're hiding from each other, and they all have shovels, and they're all trying to find this big W, where in the background, the trees are a W. Like they come in and literally they form a W. And finally, they're all in the scene, and they all just stop, and they turn around, and now they see it, right? So now they're going to go start digging, and they're trying to knock each other over to get to this money. And there are cops that are following them because they want to know if there's any money there in it. And then one of the cops is crooked; he's going to steal the money. It's just fun. I mean, I can't even describe the plot. It's so convoluted. But these people are just so funny in how they show you the worst characteristics of humanity by trying to get there. But under the big W, this is kind of what that reminds me of, because the trees back there almost look like they spell something out, especially when you take into account the reflections in the water. All right, so got another funky little area here. Oh, there is a creek there. Okay, I see that now. Now your last two have an interesting technique. Is this the channel changing technique that you created to get some of the color in this, or or is it just hue and saturation, or how did you get
Are you
the
down to the
effect?
bottom too? Because right now all I see is the one tree that's called Trevor the tree and his goons. Are you talking
Yeah,
about the colorful ones at the bottom?
yeah, Tripping on the Roots and Trip Portal are the two that I'm looking at right now. You're not seeing those.
Yeah. For the main one that doesn't really have anything special in it, like honestly, I got the idea based on that it didn't look good in black and white and it didn't look good in color. So, and then when I turned up the saturation like all the way, it looked like that, and I was like, I actually kind of like that. And then I took that idea and I put it to this one, and I put a little galaxy in the tree so it would look cool and kind of have a story to it, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the one that I saw first. And we were talking about doing potentially doing some type of composite for this week if you went down that road. So this kind of satisfies that as being a little bit of a composite, in that you combined a couple of images. And yeah, I think it's interesting to put something like that in this tree. It almost looks like I don't know, like if you were small enough to fit in there, that you would, travel someplace very bizarre. So
Yeah.
is this just the effect is just turning the saturation all the way up? Is that how you did that, you said?
I'm sorry, say it again. The connection is bad. The Wi-Fi here is awful.
Oh, okay. So you said that you just turned the saturation way up. That's how you achieve
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yep.
So it's funny because we're going to look later on at some saturation things that are kind of, you might like, if you like this, you might like that, because they're going to be kind of similar.
Cool.
This one, to me, of all the images here, this one is definitely the most interesting and the most unique. It's very colorful. I like the panorama aspect of it. The others, I feel like, as much as I like this galaxy in there, I think it's just, there's a lot going on in a small space.
Hmm.
The other ones, that one's an interesting panorama, but I don't think it's as interesting as that one. So I think that's probably your best image here.
Cool.
I think the only thing I wish, and this isn't, there's nothing you could have done about this. I wish that tree in the center weren't there. If you can envision
Yeah.
this shot without that tree in the center, that creek flows, it draws your eye right back through the entire image and goes around that bend, and that tree kind of stops it. But like I said, without a chainsaw, not sure there's a whole lot you could have done about that. All right, so let's move on to Chris. So Chris, we have 3 images. I'm going to bring them up. Well, let's just bring them up in the order that they're here. This one's kind of haunting. So I see the shoes on the floor and then the shadow created. Tell me what you did and if there's a reason why.
So you take a picture with like me in the shoes, and it casts a shadow on the wall, and then without moving, you like me get out of the shoes, and then you just combine the images and mask out the picture of me, and it leaves you with the shadow. I don't know. I thought it was pretty simple to do, but I thought it was a pretty unique small composite idea.
Yeah, it is. And it's a technique similar to a technique that I've used way many times over the years. Tell me about the processing because it has this really cool monochromatic, burnt orange look to it. What did you do to achieve that?
Well, I use this word a lot, grunge. Like I like the way like things look grungy and haunted. So I mean if you look at the file name, I edited on my phone. I did the Photoshop thing where I had to like take the shadow and then I just export it to my phone, and I just play with it. I probably pulled the saturation down. Oh man, like it's just one of those things. Like you made a comment about that one of the you were showing a photographer's photos. He just like kind of goes with it, and then you're left with an end result. I feel like that's how I am. I just start making edits to the point where I don't even know what's going on.
And just see where it leads you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I did some like monochromatic like filters. I don't know exactly. I know that I completely wiped out this back side because that was bright, because that there was a light on in this back room to the left of the shot.
Hmm.
So I went in there and I completely made that look like it was really dark, which it really wasn't.
Well, I think that was necessary because the
Yeah.
image has a dark, moody feel to it. And I think if that had been light back in there, I think that would have destroyed it.
Oh yeah.
It also creates some balance with that shadow. You know, it's kind of massive in the center. It really, I tell you what it looks like. It reminds me of I don't know if you've ever seen any of the images in the aftermath of Hiroshima or Nagasaki. There are some flash, like where people were vaporized,
Yeah,
and
I've
they have,
seen those. You're
yeah,
right. Yeah,
that
you're right.
that was the first thing that came to mind. That and then on the other end of it, you kind of get this creepy ghost-like feel.
Yeah, I definitely wanted it to look like it was a ghost. Even like I don't know, I kind of made the edges not as defined because I wanted it. I definitely wanted it to be a ghost. I guess that's like the thesis of the picture.
I think the only reason, and I definitely feel that, but I think the only reason that the other explanation feels stronger to me is just the shoes,
Yeah.
like that's all that's left. Like somebody was, I think what happened was the dragon from Beth's picture burnt somebody to a crisp here, and that's all that's left. So I think the two of you got together and kind of put that image together. I like it a lot. I mean, I think it's got a real haunting feel. Like I said, the technique that you used is something that I used 1,000 times, where if I'm photographing anything like, maybe a family with kids or especially pets were the big one, where give you an example. If I've got to take a picture of 3 or 4 dogs in an image without people, and if it's just the dogs, it is really difficult to get them to stand still, because if there's people in there holding them or hanging on to them, that's easy. But if it's just the dogs, they don't want to do that. So what I've done in the past is actually have the dogs put the owners put the dogs where I want them, and then they would hold the dogs, but from behind. So like, from camera position, we go out and we have the dogs, and then the people are behind the dogs holding the collar, so that from the camera position, I'm seeing the whole front of the dog. And then the camera's on a tripod, it's locked down. And as soon as we get the dogs in that picture, even if we have to do one at a time, then the people and the dog leave. And I take a photograph of just the background. And then it's real easy, like what you just did. You have 2 shots that you just combine together really easily. You can because they overlap so perfectly. You don't even have to be perfect with how you brush it. You know, you could just brush the dog in or brush the people out, whichever is easier to do. It's probably something we ought to look at some point in doing. You already clearly understand the process, but it is it is a pretty simple process, and I think everybody should see that. Especially now seeing an image like this and understanding what some of the potential uses of it would be. But I think it was really cool overall. I like the fact that we still see a little bit of the Nike emblem there, so we kind of know, like we know it's not a shadow, you know, because it would be
Yeah,
easy
yeah.
to assume that maybe that's just a part of the shadow or something as well. But now we can see that and see a little bit of the laces. So I think the concept here was really really interesting. In fact, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know which of your three I'm going to like more, but I'll have to wait until I hear the explanations. So this one, um, I'm a big fan of star charts,
So fun.
navigational items. Yeah, things like that. Like in fact, I had considered when I redid my bedroom, I was going to do it with all very ancient nautical type artifacts throughout the room. Stuff like this, you know, in maps, like old parchment maps and things like that. I ended up not being able to find the things that I wanted. So I had to go in a different direction, but I kind of like this. So tell me, is there a reason why you superimpose these two images?
Stargazing.
Ah, okay. So there's the
Yeah.
title. I think the title, so the file names that I'm seeing obviously are different
I
because,
know. I need to start like naming them or something. Everybody names them besides me.
and I'm telling you that alone, that title alone makes this image just go through the roof for me.
Yeah.
That completely does. Do you have a title for this one?
No.
Okay, that's
No.
okay. But yeah, if you had, like I said, I think it would make that even more interesting. But this, I love the image, but with the title, it's like way over the top. Um, and this looks like a fairly, like, I don't think you did a whole, it was
Uh,
just an overlay, like a pretty simple.
yeah.
Uh,
For this picture, I mean, I like this picture. It's definitely last on the list for me. I came up with the idea and I was like, okay, that sounds good. And I just like the way it turned out. I wish I may have like softened the edges a little bit more, now that I'm looking at it, but I don't know. I think it looks pretty cool.
yeah, I don't know that I would have, I don't
Simple.
know that there's too much more I would have done to it. The star chart in the center is sharper than anything else in the image, but um, I think that's kind of necessary. Like, I don't think I'd either want to see everything tack sharp or the way you did it. I don't think I would have wanted you to soften that down to match the eye. I think it makes a little more sense for that to be
Yeah.
a little sharper. Yeah, I just like it overall.
The
I think.
yeah, the eyelashes were kinda hard, to be honest, making this, like, I kinda cut them off a little bit, but it's not too noticeable, but that was the hardest part about this picture, just trying to get that to blend and not completely take out my eyelashes
Mm.
but no, that's pretty I like it.
Yeah, I do too. I think again, it's a good storytelling image, and especially with the title, I think that's really what makes it work. All right, now this one is also really interesting,
Yeah, this one's my favorite.
but you got to tell me what the thought process was and how you did it technically.
Okay. Technically, I caught a, newspaper on fire while I held it. Like, I actually did that. And if you read the newspaper, it talks about regional vaccines and it talks about COVID deaths. And I lost my grandfather to COVID. So, like, I don't know. I'm just kind of fed up with everything. So I was like, I'm burning this newspaper. So, um, yeah. And then I went in and I actually took other pictures of burning paper and stuff like that. And I overlaid it. So like those what looks like sparks almost up on my face and up in the
Uh-huh.
top right. That's just another picture. So that's a small composite, only two images. And then for some reason I liked like framing it like all weird at the bottom. I don't know. I just went crazy with it.
Yeah, so it's funny. One of the things we're going to look at here in a little bit is edging a photograph that way, and some of the ways to do that. It can be really effective, especially in this case because it works with the technique really well because it looks like the image itself is on fire or it's being consumed or whatever. And then there's clearly there's a texture overlay of some
Yeah.
sort. I can see it across you.
Um, I I think it's on Snapseed. It's called Grunge, and I just like the way it makes things look textured. Cause like I'm really big into like when you look at old pictures or old art, it will look cracked and like worn and just aged. I really like that look, and I've been doing a lot of pictures like that lately.
Yeah, I have I think I know where it is. I'll pull it up here real quickly. One of my texture files that I use all the time um, is that thing exactly. Let's see where that is. Textures. Here we go. So this is go back by file. This is my folder full of textures. There are 398 of them in here, and these are the files that I use for overlays. And if you go down, we'll just kind of scroll down if you guys are keeping up with this. You can see I've got some old steel doors, some wooden doors, wallpaper. Some of these are mold, liquid things. These right through here, this is actually frost. I had a friend who spent some time in Europe and he just shot all sorts of marble textures and things. That's where some of these came from. Here's a mosaic, like a tile mosaic from a floor. And I just use these peeling paint on the wall. I use these for all sorts of things. I love the burnt edges one like these that automatically kind of gives you that little burnt edge. Steel plates, rust, bricks, anything at all that looks like it, here's a tree root over here. Let me see what else we have in here. Concrete, stucco. This one's an interesting one because of this lighter part up here. It actually changes the lighting pattern on the image sometimes. These columns, I mean, you wouldn't believe that some of these could work really well as overlays, but I'm going to scroll down through, but then I'm going to show you the one that I'm talking about. These are some that I shot somewhere in southern West Virginia. These just cool little expanded metal pieces that work really well. Some of them are a little more simple. Some of them are a little more complex. This is probably one of my favorite ones right here because of the tonality of it and the texture in that stucco or whatever that is. I use that an awful lot. There's some more brick. There's some more peeling paint and wood. But anyway, the one that I like the most, you just mentioned, is up near the top here. Yeah, this one right here. And so it's got that cracked, it's probably a combination of two things put together. It looks like a texture combined with some cracked paint on a plaster wall or something like that. And this one works great if you're trying to give it an old antique feel or antique look to use this as part of the overlay. So yeah, man, I love my textures. I think it lends itself pretty well to this. There's a couple of things that you probably have not or did not intend that come across. It's going to come across to different viewers different ways. So your hat and your clothing, I'm sure it's not what it is or not what it looks like, but it almost looks to me like a uniform, like an old German uniform. And so, what was one of the first things the Germans did, the Nazis did, is they burned books. They burned all sorts of stuff that they felt was, counter. So and the Hitler Youth was a huge thing, right? Like he wanted to get to them early. And so this sort of looks like some Hitler Youth that's burning, journalism and some, just information, like trying to keep information from the public. So you can create these stories in your head sometimes just by seeing things that were
Yeah.
never really intended by, by the
And
author.
I actually did wear it on purpose though.
Did you?
Yeah. So like I said, my grandfather died from COVID not too long ago at the beginning of the year. Um, and when he passed away, I took all of his hats, and he was in the military for like 30 years. So that's actually a Vietnam
Oh,
hat.
wow.
Yeah. So then, yeah, it all kind of connected. But no, that is pretty funny how you looked at it like that. That is funny.
Yeah, that was literally my first impression of it entirely. And I didn't even really read the,
I definitely don't expect anybody to be able to read that.
I mean,
You
I
can
can,
definitely see the pins though.
yeah, I can see regional vaccine clinics. I can see something in Wheeling in 2020. Um, somebody named player of the year at the top, but it's just kind of, the image that I did a few weeks ago that I think I showed you guys, where I used somebody reading a newspaper. I went in and actually changed all of the headlines to match what it was that I was trying, the message that I was trying. I'm pretty sure I showed you that. She's sitting on a wire with crows beside her on a telephone wire with an umbrella hanging. I think I showed you that, didn't I? Or did I not? No?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
It's interesting in light of this, definitely, because I had a huge problem with the newspaper. We bought a newspaper, and I knew I was going to replace at least the headlines, but because of the lighting that we used, and because of the fact that a newspaper is not perfectly, rectangular, it's got this movement to it. It was a little tough to get things, a lot tougher to get things the way I wanted. I think I know where it is. Let me just take a quick look. I was sure I showed it to you guys. I called it, nope, that's not it. This is the right folder, but I called it Bird on a Wire. It'll take a second. There we go. So, these buildings are actually downtown. They're like right as you get off the Fort Henry
That's right where the
Bridge.
Mark Wheeling thing is. Right?
Yes, exactly. And I've reversed it. I shot it, the other way and then reversed it. And it was shot in the middle of the day, and it's been darkened and the windows were lit up to make it look like it was a nighttime shot. But the idea here, I had seen an image that was kind of like this. Actually, she showed me this image that she wanted to kind of recreate, but I didn't like certain things. It was done in the daylight, so there wasn't a lot of drama. And I think to create drama, you need a little stronger lighting. So she shot in the studio sitting on a stool. But I knew I wanted a building. I hadn't even shot the building yet, but I knew I wanted a building with apartment lights casting light on her. So if you look at, probably should open this. If you look at her, you can see that she's lit with gels, coming from the side, so that it looks like light, warm light coming from those windows. And then on the back side, lit with a dark gel or like a blue gel, and the crows are lit the same way, because I knew I wanted that kind of a dusk type of a sky back there, something that might create that. And then we did the overhead. So all of these are like, the only thing I didn't shoot in this image was the umbrella. I went out and found that because I wanted something that looked very antique, and I just didn't have anything like that. But the building, the light posts, the wire, the crows. And then what we did was completely changed the headlines that were on this. It says privacy issues ruffle feathers, obviously a comment about the crows. Birds of a feather still flock together. Even the pictures I changed in the newspaper, I found just a couple of stock images of crows on telephone wires. The subtitle says, normal people forced to take matters into their own hands. Narcissists have trouble minding their own business. Study shows nosy people among the mentally unhealthiest. So the whole idea behind this Let me zoom it back out if I can. Came from an image where the kind of the title of it was, it said something like, don't worry about what I'm doing, worry about why you're worried about what I'm doing. And so the idea is that there are people out there who kind of stick their nose in places where they don't belong and cause trouble for people. And she's had quite a bit of this happen, just with things that, you know, people had no business commenting on or whatever. So she wanted to put this together, and it was one of those things that, like, you know, she'll post it, and only the people that it's really intended for will kind of get it. Nobody else will really get it. But that newspaper was really tough because, you know, like I said, it's lit with a gel from one side. So to get to keep that and replace the headlines the way we did was definitely you know, an exercise in difficulty. Like you don't really see it here, but these lines don't go straight across. They actually have a little rise in them and a little bit of an arc in places to match the bend in the newspaper. So anyway, it was a fun image to do. But when I saw yours, let me get back to it. There we go. You didn't have to replace any of it, but I really didn't think that you set it on fire. I really thought that was all added later.
No, I actually just set it on fire.
So obviously no eyelashes were harmed in the making of this image.
Luckily, everything went smoothly.
Well, that's good. Well, sorry to hear about your grandfather.
Oh no, yeah, thank you, appreciate that.
It has not been fun or easy for anybody. It still blows my mind the number of people that think it's a hoax or a joke or something like that. But I think most of us at this point know somebody who's at least had it and had a really rough time with it. You know, luckily a lot of people have had it and have not, you know, have gotten through it pretty easily, but there's just as many that haven't. And yeah, it's no joke, that's for sure. I'm finally fully vaccinated and past the threshold that I have to wait. So I'm supposedly okay, which is good because I have to get on a plane next Sunday, and I'm not really looking forward to that. Not sure how well that's going to go. And spend 4 days in Atlanta. I'm actually going to a Braves baseball game while I'm there, and we have I think there's probably 15 or so of us that'll be there. We have a private box. But even within the private box, we have to maintain social distancing. We have to wear masks, even if we're vaccinated, unless we're eating. So I'm planning to eat the entire time because I can't imagine a 3-hour baseball game and wearing a mask the whole time. And I certainly don't want to imagine 3 days of a board meeting wearing a mask. So I know they have moved us. We typically have these meetings in our headquarters, which is right downtown, and they've moved us to the Omni Hotel, which is next to Centennial Park, because it's a bigger location and they can spread us out a little bit more, and when we shouldn't have to do that. But anyway, all three of these images, Chris, are really just phenomenal. I mean, they're just all top notch. As simple as this one is, sometimes it's the simplicity that can grab you the most. And I even think the conversion to toned black and white even adds to that even more. This one, like I said, you can come up with 2 or 3 stories right off the bat. This one was obviously more complex and more difficult to pull off, and that's probably why. And it has more of an emotional meaning to you. So I think we'll go with that one because literally I could go with any of them. I think all 3 of them are incredibly strong. This was one of your best weeks, and you've had some really good weeks. I think sometimes when we put our own personalities and our own emotions into an image, like into a concept, rather than just take a picture and let's play with it. I think that's where things shine. We're going to look at an image in a little while that was part of a series that I did that I didn't even know when I spent 4 months creating this series, and I didn't even know when I was doing it, why I was doing it. I didn't understand subconsciously what the meaning behind it was until I had to sit down and write a synopsis of this series, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I suddenly understood why I did it. I think you knew going in what you were doing here. It's not always the case, but yeah, great job, all three of these. Okay, Eva, tell me. So let's look first. We have this. It's a flamingo, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got is no, it's not. I'm not sure where you've had a couple of images like this. I don't know if it's the same location, but have I not seen this staircase before?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used the staircase from another.
Where where is
and-
this actually?
It's not a state park in Pennsylvania. Raccoon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been there. It's been many, many years, but I have been there. It's a really, what's that?
It's over at the Mineral Springs.
It's a really cool spot. Like it's like I don't remember this spot, but I'm just visually from looking at it, there's a lot you could do with this staircase. Like it's got a really cool vibe. I love the moss growing all over it and everything. Let's start with this one though. So tell me what it is that what you did here. It says thinking of summer.
Yeah. I just basically switched out the sky.
Okay. So the rest
Sky
of it,
was rocks and flowers and
the bottom 2/3 of the image then is fairly straightforward from what you shot.
but I stretched out the hue and saturation on the bottom.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. We have a little bit of a glow going on around the bird. So the sky makes sense because of that. It again, it kind of flows into that into the bird. It looks a little bit of like an alien landscape with all the pictures that we're seeing recently from Mars. Not that the Martian atmosphere actually looks like this, but that's kind of the way they always portray it in film. That's kind of what I thought of as almost like an alien creature on an alien world, because it's kind of funky looking all over. Isn't it funny how, I don't know if you guys have ever watched, I watch a lot of nature shows. I love looking at, even if they're animals that we're fairly familiar with, but especially ones that we aren't, like shows that are revolve around the deepest parts of the ocean and some of the incredibly unique and diverse life that exists there. And when you think about it, we have such an amazing diversity of life right here on our planet. And yet when they do a movie about an alien from another planet, they look like us. Like we have millions of species right here that look nothing like us. And they're even based on the same carbon, footprint that we are. And yet they want to portray aliens as us with just antlers or something. I don't know. It just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. But when I see, even a flamingo, which is a fairly common bird to us, when you really look at it, it's a really odd creature, right? Like, this is kind of what blows my mind all the time. I'm constantly thinking about how much diversity we have in life on this planet, and we all live for the most part under the same we all breathe the same atmosphere, we all have the same gravity and all of that. How do we have so much diversity with the same basic elements? It's kind of weird. But anyway, an image like this just kind of makes me think of stuff like that. This one, I for whatever reason, I really like this one a lot. Obviously you've added the little toadstools and the butterflies and all of that. I think the fact that they look a little bit luminescent is kind of cool. I don't know if they looked like that from wherever you took them or if you added that effect, but tell me about that. Where did you get these from?
My daughter was posed next to the mushrooms at a putt-putt. So I cut her out and just used the mushrooms and changed the colors.
Yeah, well, it works. I mean, the only thing that I think maybe would have been a little more, I might have liked to see a little less saturation everywhere but the mushrooms. You know what I mean? To let them pop out just a little more. Because I think the color is so strong in that, that green cast is so strong, at least in the steps. Maybe not the surrounding areas, because I really like that moss and I like the leaves and all of that, but maybe just in the steps to have it a little bit desaturated would have let them pop out a little more. But it creates this, this leading line up the staircase with a little bit of a curve back. So yeah, I really like that. I think that I think this was again a good combination of images to use. So I'm happy with that. Maybe just a little less saturation, but other than that, looks pretty good. All right, let's put this in. Okay, Jaden. So here are Jaden's. We're going to look at her original images. So we've got this lighting pattern, which is a really cool lighting pattern, by the way. I have one that's similar to this, but I like yours better. Don't know where you found it, but I'm stealing it. It's going in I have another folder of just lighting patterns, so we're going to steal that. Then we have, we're back to bees. But this is not what is this? It looks like the bees should not be there.
Well, we keep bees, so that's one of the hives.
It really is. Oh, okay. It looked like something a little more, I don't know. I don't know, like it's just like they shouldn't be there. Like it's not a hive. It looks a little too man-made, I guess. But anyway, that's cool. And then this, another image that I really like that you found. I have a library of images like this too. I have to be careful how I use them. With you guys, it's not really going to be so much of an issue, but if I use something and then even if I just post it on social media, it's actually a violation of copyright to do that unless I have permission from the artist. And most of the time you don't know who did these. They just, they're populated all over the internet. So we use them if we significantly change them to the point where they're unrecognizable for the most part from the original, then it falls under the guise of fair use. But I really like this, and I think I'll probably find a use for it at some point. I like the little, here's your little figure that's actually in the center of this, which is kind of cool. And I don't know, I can't remember if you left that in the final version or not, but probably not. But that's a pretty cool little thing. Neat little rendition. And then we have the flower. We have the girl in the position, which is funny that this is just a dorm room shot. And then we've got this protruding, whatever, mushroom or whatever off the tree. So you've got all of those original images, and this was the final result. And I just think it's hilarious. I think it's extremely well done in some respects. When I say that, what I mean is, I don't look at this and with any sense of realism, obviously, because of the scale of everything. We kind of know what it is that we're looking at. But I think the things that you had, the original images that you had, the way you put this together, again, great concept, really pretty good execution. I see, let me look something at one of your originals here. Okay, so that's a crack in it. So the crack that is in this mushroom kind of looks, or whatever this is protruding from a tree, looks a little bit like a shadow that she would have cast. But I do see some dark edge underneath her. Like I don't know if you added a little bit of a shadow to that or not. Or
Yeah, I did a little bit.
yeah, and in this case, it works really well. Maybe if I'm going to open this up. Let me open your PSD. I don't know if I would have said, yeah, I think maybe the shadow is a little short and a little hard edged, but just a little. Like it needed to be there. It would have really looked pasted in without that. So a great job of recognizing that you needed that. maybe just a little bit more of it, where Beth had a little too much, you had a little too less, but still works really well. And then of course we've got 3 or 4, actually 5 different images, all of which have different lighting on them. But they're not significantly different enough to make it, you know what I mean? We don't have a strong light coming in one direction in one image and then strong light from the other direction in another. It's fairly soft light in all of them. I think I think she's like facing a window, so you can kind of see that she's lit up that way, but it's soft light, and so the rest of them blend in pretty well. You did a really good job of really making it look like she's holding that flower, the way that's masked out through her hand. I don't really see a lot of additional pixels anywhere, which is another thing that I see a lot when people do this, is they leave a little too much on the edges, and it's a telltale sign. This, I think, was just done really well. I like the final cropping that you did on it. The choices that you made about which parts of the original images that you use, like this ledge that she's sitting on is much more prominent here than it is actually in the original image. So this one made me smile when I first looked at it. It's like you can't not get the idea, right? Because it's kind of an easy one to figure out. But I appreciate the effort that went into this. Just like with Beth's image, I like the fact that you thought this through, that you pulled these images together and made something that was far better than the sum of the parts. So this one was done pretty well. Let me see what your, what your layer palette looks like. All right, so we did start with our background, which you blurred. I love that. Definitely was a help. Then we brought the tree in, the girl, the flower, changed the hue and saturation in the background, the bee, and then an overall color cast. This is almost like a color grading effect. Oh, and that was the light pattern that you used. I see.
Yeah, I changed the hue of it to give it more of a cooler feel to contrast with the warm of the bee.
Yeah. I think the only, if you wanted to really contrast that, maybe mask out a little bit of that off of the bee. Let me just see how, if I take a paintbrush at 100%, if it's going to make much of a difference, I don't know. It makes a little difference, but again, it's not a big enough difference for me to say you should have done that. It looks pretty good the way it is. I like the choices that you made all the way through. I like being able to see the PSD file so I can go up through and see how this was put together. Yeah, really well done. I like the fact that your hue and saturation does not affect, for the most part, your foreground image. Yeah, you did a great job on this. Looks really good. And again, I like the concept a lot. And then being able to see what you started with and where you ended up was really helpful. So good job on that. This was, as a composite goes, it was a fun one. It was a cute one. I really liked it. All right, so finally we have Alana's. So it looks like we did some throwback images, right? So we did a panorama on the black and white bars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me move this down so we can see that. This is probably one of the better river panoramas that I've seen. I was a little torn at first about the vapor trails. Would I rather them not be there? Would I rather there be like puffy clouds? I don't know. I think, honestly, when I look at it, I think they belong there because the whole idea of transportation is what I'm seeing here. We've got the suspension bridge on the right-hand side, the barge, which is the river. So we have automobile traffic, we have river traffic, and we have airline traffic. So for me, those three things kind of work really well together. Plus, they create these cool leading lines
Yeah.
that go over top. I like the definition in the sky, the gradation from bottom to top, and yeah, the panorama is done really well. So this is a really good one. I like this one a lot.
Thank you.
This one's called Burning a Hole in My Pocket.
Hmm.
Yeah, I understand that concept, believe me. Tell me a little bit about what you did here.
So I just took my jeans and just put the coin where it was ripped, and then just took the picture.
Well,
I
you did
wanted to do like a macro type of a picture.
you did a little more than that. It looks like there's some processing
Well,
and
yeah, I did like a sketch kind of a thing.
that's what I figured. Yeah. And it actually, I think it's cool because I would not have really known that that was a ripped pair of jeans. I wouldn't have really known what that was.
Yeah.
But it works because of the color harmony. You've got the warm tones matched against the cool tones. And again, it's a simple image. It's a good composition. Not a lot of things there that I can complain about. So that's always good. And then I probably should have known it was the jeans by the title. That's what should have given it to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that one. This one is Possibilities. Let me move this. So this is obviously, is it a dog or a cat?
It's a cat.
Cat's paw. So you were playing with macro, looks like a little bit.
Yeah.
I think this is cute. I think that it's again simple. And even though I kind of would recognize what it was even without the title, it's a viewpoint that we don't normally see. So that one's interesting to me. This one is probably is between, oh, I don't know. You've got three of them that I really like. So tell me what you did here.
So growing up, my favorite movie was Wizard of Oz. So like I have all these little figures and stuff like that. So I just took them and it's actually Yellow Brick Road that they're on. And then I had a picture of the rainbow colors on my phone, and I just did a long exposure and just made an arc with it.
Cool. I love the color in it. The saturation is awesome.
Mhm.
I love the symmetry of the top and bottom.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that,
and I put it on a mirror. Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say, I wondered if that was an actual reflection or if you just flipped that, but it looks like it would, yeah, would have been tough to do with the Yellow Brick Road coming in if you had flipped
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's pretty well done. Again, not a whole lot I can look at and complain about. Except I'm not sure why the Cowardly Lion is outcast the way he is.
I don't know.
Like he should be part of the group. Did you ever see the movie Under the Rainbow?
No.
Oh, if this was one of your favorite movies, you've got to see that. The movie is about it's based on the making of Wizard of Oz. My God, I lost the title. I was going to call it something else. It's based on the making of that. It's a comedy. And it's about what really happened during filming of the movie with all of the little people who were in Hollywood for that they literally, like, these were like they tore hotel rooms apart. They turned the city upside down. The city could not wait to be rid of them. They were such nasty little, but not nasty,
God.
like they were just like mischievous, I guess is the best way to put it. And I think Pat McCormick is the actor's name who plays, one of the main characters in it. And so this is a little off color, but I'll tell you anyway. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is, he's normal size, right? Actually, he's a really big guy, and he gets on an elevator, and there's all of these little munchkins on the elevator with him. And, this was back in the days, it was 1939. The movie came out in 39, was probably filmed in 38. back in the days when you got on an elevator and there was an elevator operator and you told the operator where you were going. Like if you got into a department store elevator, you would say mezzanine level or, you know, whatever, fifth floor, and they would push the button and take you there. So he gets on the elevator and there's all these munchkins and the elevator, he looks at the elevator operator and he goes, ballroom. And one of the little munchkins goes, sorry, I didn't know we were crowding you. So just a little off color joke from the movie. But if you like that movie, you've got to watch that one because it's such a hilarious telling of what actually happened during filming of that. So fun thing. I like this image a lot. I like that one and I like that one. And I honestly, I mean, nothing wrong with the cat's paw either, but I think these have a little more impact. So you're going to have to pick because these are all three equal for me.
I think I like the Wizard of Oz one.
Yeah, I won't disagree. I mean, yeah, not at all. So let's just put that in. And let me get back to this for a second.
I sent you mine at the very beginning of class. You might not have
Oh,
gotten them. Sorry.
I see them now. So let me pull those. I'll tell you what we'll do, because it's already 20 after 5. We will take a little break. I will download these, pull them over, and we'll look at those before we vote on anything. And then we'll move into the second part of the class. So let's see, 5:20. Let's come back at 5:35. 5:30. Let's come back at 5:40. And then we'll finish this part up and we'll look at, there's several techniques that we're going to look at in the second half of class. If we start to run out of time, we may hold one or two of them until another class, but there's at least 2 of them that I want to get through today. But let's come back at 5:40 and we'll pick up on that. Let me stop sharing and we'll see you guys then. Sorry about that. I was ready to come back in and saw that my dog had peed on the floor. He doesn't like being locked out. Anyway, let us look at the last set of images from Taylor. Might have to change. Oh, yep, there they are. Okay. All right. So color, pencil, and ripple. So I'm guessing that you played in the filter menu in Photoshop to get some of these,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah, the colored pencil is it's one that I use every once in a while. Did you do anything else to this?
I'm not really exactly sure what I did, but on the right, how you see there's so much white, I like colored that in. I'm not exactly sure how I did that, but I just like I was selecting all kinds of different tools, and I started like using the brush tool over there, and it was doing something. It was like lightening up that area to the right, and then I added that ripples effect onto it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple composition. Again, we have a strong diagonal. We don't really have a strong center of interest. Like there's not the subject itself is is a little plain, but the effect is it works with this. It's not. I don't think it's the best of the three images that you did, but it's not bad, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I kind of think the original
I-
image was better because it was really clear. Like that water droplet was like the center of attention, but I wanted to try to use some like filters. So, so I used something that
Yeah,
I learned in class and
I think that you're probably right. I think that the effects probably minimized that part of it a little bit, which sometimes they augment and sometimes they they hinder a little bit. And I think the effect isn't overpowering, but yeah, I think it was strong enough to probably keep that water droplet from being as prominent as it was. And I think maybe all of the white on the right side is maybe a little strong as well. Maybe that's what's bothering me a little bit, but it's just not the strongest of the three. I think the other two are. I think this one's better than the first one. Is this is it a water drop again, or is this one of those
lens balls.
lens balls? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a.
Is that what that
ball.
is?
Mm-hmm.
And then you played with some liquify on the edges of it, right?
Yeah, and then I added that dry brush filter.
Gotcha. Yeah, again, simple image, so not a whole lot to critique. I like the swirl pattern that you used on the edges of the ball a little bit, and then yeah, a little bit of a technique on the image inside. I might have wondering what this would be like. I'm not sure why my rotational tools are not working here. Let me just open it in Photoshop. I was wondering if I would like it better in this orientation, but I don't think I do. I think I like the fact that it's a little upside down. And it kind of feels like what I felt like today. I was in a snow globe this morning. What an April Fool's joke, right? Did everybody see the snow this morning? Did you guys get snow where you were?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty nasty. I mean, it didn't really hurt anything. It just felt bad after being 73 degrees the other day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a better image. I think this one is probably by far the best though.
Yeah, me too. I love that one, honestly.
So I don't remember the filter's name, but there is a filter in the bottom of that filter menu that I've used a few times that does this. So I'm assuming that was at least one of the things that you did. It's, what is that filter? See if I can pull it up here. Nope, not without an image open.
It's like a glow, neon glow or something.
Neon glow, that's it. Oh, and this is it's a GIF image, so it's not going to be available until I change this to, huh. Yeah, filters aren't available on a file like this, so let me just save it as a JPEG. Oh, interesting. Why is it JPEG is not an option, even though, oh, it's indexed color. That's why. Let's change it to RGB. Now it should work. Yeah, if you go into filter gallery, that's where you were, right? In the filter gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So plastic wrap is the first thing that comes up and it puts it on there. Stylize, glowing edges. That's the one that I've used before that kind of does this effect. And I guess that's probably what that was. Yeah, it works really well on this. I think the color is interesting. The blues and the greens, or the purples and greens, or whatever, that are kind of split on this diagonal right up. You know, with the bird and everything below being one shade and everything above being another. Not sure if a non-centered composition wouldn't have been a little better, but with that being said, the centered composition isn't bad either. I think the eye, this bird's eye, being as prominent as it is, it makes all the little circles in the background kind of, you know, work with that, like it's the same shape and everything. So it's an interesting one. Yeah, and this is definitely an eye-catching image. I think this is by far the best of the three. Let me see if it'll let me close it. There we go. All right, so now we can do a little voting. So yeah, 7 images. We got 7 images. Let me take a look here. Well, let's just see where we go. So let's see who votes for the newspaper on fire. 2, 3, okay. The neighborhood bird buddy. Okay. The queen bee. Rare encounter. Somewhere over the rainbow. Tripping on roots. And Wonderland. All right, so by show of hands, the flaming newspaper, which, did you have a title for this, Chris? No title? I think all 3 of these images scream for titles. And I think if you think about it and come up with one, you're going to really be happy that you did, because the one you had for the second image was just really good. I think, oh boy. Okay. So that one wins the popular vote. I really like several more of these, but I'm going to be stingy and I'm going to give Queen Bee the only other point here. Jaden, that was yours, right?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, let me get that on here. And Chris. I think, I mean, again, I like something about all of them. Those are just the 2. And Beth, man, you're so close here. Like, I really want to, I mean, I just think the more I looked at it, the more I appreciated the thought that went into that. I just wish those shadows had been a little, I like the fact that you did them. I like the fact that you tried. I just wish they'd been, if they had been, and then the exposure being a little better, I think you would have been right there with them. But I'm gonna hold it there for now and be stingy. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so we're gonna look at, like I said, we'll look at a couple of techniques, whatever we have time for. I'm gonna demonstrate a couple things. I think we may only, we'll see how far along we get. I have a few things in here that we can play with. Oh, let's see, where are we? Oh, I thought I had them in this week's folder, but I put them somewhere else. Let's do this. All right, so what we're going to do for next week, what you're going to do for next week, for the assignment for next week, is something that I call picture in picture. And what I don't mean is something, there's a couple of images here that I'm going to show you that is not really what I'm talking about. These are actually done in camera. You know, this is just a girl, looks like holding part of a mirror or something, I guess. And then, oops, wrong one. And then the other one is this, which is just a phone image with the same image in the background. So that's not what I'm talking about. This is a little more simplistic. I want to do something a little more complex. Something like this is one. Now this could be, he could be actually holding just this actual picture, but more than likely he's just holding the frame, and the pictures have been added later on, sort of like something like this, which is kind of cool. This repeating pattern down. This is really interesting. This is another really cool. And of course, you're not going to probably be able to pull something like this off because there's a lot of time passage involved in this one. But I love these old series where people have an old photograph of something and they hold it up and line it up with the actual current version of that. You see this done with a lot of like World War II photographs and so forth in Paris and in those areas. But this is fun, but I don't think that you'd be able to pull that off. Something like this and like this, you definitely can. In fact, I'm going to show you one that I did for a magazine cover a few years ago. So we took all of these original images. These are all members of the same family standing on the mansion porch holding these frames. So this is the grandmother. This is, I think this is the grandson. This is the daughter. And then this is the great granddaughter. So we had all these generations and we put them all together into this image. So basically all we did was, you know, stripe those in. And I'm just going to show you, there's a couple of things that you need to know. Not so much on this one. This was a little more straightforward, but I'll show you another one afterwards. It's a little more difficult. Let me find my, okay, so the PSD, and I haven't done any of this in advance. So, and it's been a while since I've done it, so hopefully I can still do this. So this was the first and second images. All right, so what I'm going to do is just drag the second image on top of the first image and then close the second image up. And so now I've got this image that I need to put into that frame. And the first thing obviously is to transform it down. So it's going to be Command T or Control T on Command T on Mac, Control T on Windows. And then I'm just going to drag, I'm going to use the option bar rather than using the corner handles. In the options bar, when you first hit Command or Control T, the link icon between the height and the width field should be on. And if it is, all you have to do is put your cursor over either the W or the H and drag left or right, and that'll scale it down. And then I'm just going to do a rough position. It needs to be rotated a little bit. So when the cursor goes outside of that image, it'll turn into this double arrow and you can rotate it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just line up one of the corners and then get the rotation right. Helps if you're magnified, you know, enough that you can kind of see what's going on. And it depends on how much of the image you can afford to lose. In this case, I can afford to lose a little bit. So I'm just going to place this. Yeah, I'm looking, I really want to keep the bottom part of this image. So let's see if I bring it in from here. All right, so that's about my minimum. Let's go up a little higher. I'm just looking about where this is going to fall. All right, we're going to try it there. So I'm just going to accept the transformation. Then I'm going to turn that layer off. And what I'll do is I need to create this shape of the interior of the frame to mask that image out. And there's a pretty easy way to do it. In this case, I'm just going to use the polygon lasso tool. So you go to the lasso tool, you click and hold on it, and you'll see these other two tools pop up. And the second one is the polygon lasso. And all I'm going to do is click right on each of the four corners. You see it's got this little, if you can see this, this little rubber band sort of that is created when you make the first click. And I'm just going to click a second time at the upper corner, a third time over here. And I'm making sure that I'm just a little bit, I'm trying to be right on the edge, but if I'm going to err one way or the other, I'm going to be into the frame just a little bit rather than into the center of that. So we'll click for third here. And then when I get to the fourth one, I get back to my starting point. When I get right over top of it, you'll see the cursor change and it'll get a little circle right there. And that means if I click there, I'm going to close that. And now I have a selection around the interior part of that frame. I hope I got all of this on the left side. We're going to find out. So all I have to do is turn this layer back on, and I'm going to create a layer mask by clicking the layer mask button. And since I already have my selection, it should do this for me automatically. So when I click that, now I've got my image clipped or masked rather inside of that frame. If you look in the layers palette, you can see the, this is what I did. I just created this mask. Everything that's white is showing, everything that's black is hidden. And so it clipped it right to the edge. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the next picture in here. So I go back and it's this guy that I want. So we'll just drag him onto the image we're working on, close him up, and then scale him down. Now I could do like what I've talked to you before. If I click on the layer in the layers palette, I could convert this to a smart object. And what that does is it allows me to resize it multiple times without any degradation. But I know I'm only going to have to do this once. I know I'm going to get it right the first time. So I'm only going to scale it once. So I don't really have to do that. So I go into free transform again, scale him down, kind of do a rough placement and a rough rotation. Again, we're going to zoom this in so that I have a better idea of what I'm dealing with. I want to, if I lose a little bit of the bottom part of his frame, it's okay, but I definitely don't want to lose his head. Now, if you can see this, when I rotate, it's not perfect. Like if I get the bottom edge of this to match up with that rotation, then I look up the side, it's not quite perfect. There is a way around that, but I'm going to save that for the next exercise that I show you. I'm just going to kind of split the difference and kind of get him close because it's not that critical. And I think that he needs to be a little lower. Like I said, I don't mind losing the bottom of his frame, but I don't want to lose the top of his head. Let's see if I can scale him down just a little bit more. Yeah. All right, and then I'll accept that transformation, turn his layer off so that I can see what I'm doing. I'll take that polygon lasso again, and I'm going to click 4 times. Once, twice, 3, actually 5 times, because I got to get back to my starting point. And like I said, I'm staying a little bit inside the frame because I don't want to see a white edge at the edge of his picture. I don't mind if I lose a little bit of this liner of the frame. You're never going to see that. turn him back on, create a layer mask, and bang, he's on the inside. And finally, it's just the same thing for the little girl. We'll drag her on. Close the original image up. And scale her down. Free transform. Drag left. And again, when we get in here, we're really going to have to zoom this in because it's a much smaller area that we're dealing with. Yeah, even smaller than that. I can also, instead of going up here to the height and width, if I grab one of the corner handles, but I hold down, whoops, sorry. I hold down the Option key or the Alt key, it will drag that in towards the center, and it'll maintain the aspect ratio, so it won't, it won't do this. Like if I can't squeeze her in or anything like that. That key keeps me from creating a problem with aspect ratio. All right, so I want to keep her feet in. I'm more concerned with that than I am the, and of course, want to keep her head too, but I don't care about all the space that is above her. Looks like that's going to fit in there pretty well. And then last step is to use that polygon lasso, make my 5 clicks just inside the frame. Turn her back on and create the layer mask. So pretty simple, pretty quick. Obviously these are all, it's a multi-generational picture. These are all related. These people are all related. And that was the idea. It was all, the issue was on families. So it was kind of a simple way to do this. It was actually the same frame. They're all holding the same frame. Pretty easy to do that type of an effect. I'm going to show you something a little bit different, a little more challenging. And the whole thing was kind of inspired, Chris, by your image from last week, the transformation that you did on, let's look at it here. Yeah, the transformation to this piece of paper and the way you stretch that out, I thought that's something that we probably ought to look at. So we're going to do a little bit of that. And what we're going to work with is, we're going to work with these 2 images. So I've got this old table. The parchment wasn't there. I added that later. I just took that image and added it in. And I want to place an image. I want to place this image that's on the left onto that parchment and make it look like it belongs there. Like it's sort of a, I don't know, not so much a photograph as it would be almost a lithograph or something like that. So the image that's on the left was part of my Saints and Sinners. This is a representation of the goddess Aphrodite. A lot of symbolism in the image. She's pregnant because Aphrodite was the goddess of procreation. She loved doves, and there's a whole lot of stuff. There's, Greek and Roman architecture in the background, and things like that. But anyway, this is something I did a while back as a part of a 12-part series. But we're going to use her because I think this image would work really well on the parchment or make it look like it belongs there. So we're just going to drag it over, close up the original. Again, it's not the right size. So we're going to have to scale it, but we're going to have to do a couple of other things because this parchment is not flat. It's not square to the frame of the camera. So we're going to have to do a couple of different things to it. So I'm going to go into free transform again, and I'll get my initial adjustment. I'll get it down to, whoops, I didn't want to do that, down to about the size that I want. I'm going to go a little bigger because I don't mind if I lose a little, especially the reflection at the bottom, but I want it to kind of cover a fair amount of this paper. And you notice that no matter how I rotate this, I'm just not going to get this to line up properly because of the angle of this paper. So when you're in Freeze Transform, you have a couple of other options. If you right click inside, not out, well, actually you can do it outside as well. If you right click, you'll get the other transformation options here. Scale is what you're kind of in. Rotate, you get if you move your cursor outside, so you don't really need to do that. Let me show you the other ones. Skew, if you grab one corner, you can kind of pull this type of an effect, which stretches it. And it kind of is close to what we want, but not exactly. Distort, I'm not going to show you because that's the one I'm going to use, but there's a keyboard shortcut that allows me to do this without having to select it. Perspective is similar to skew, but it does an opposite thing. This is kind of cool. Like you can combine some of these effects to make these images look like they are in a completely different orientation than the way they are originally or the way they're shot. So I'm going to use, oh, I'm sorry, warp is kind of cool too, because you can actually just sort of drag it. It's almost like liquefy the way that works. Let me get this back to the original. Okay, there we go. So to use the distort without actually selecting it, you just hold down the command key on the Mac, and you hold down Control if you're on Windows. So I'm going to line, like my upper left-hand corner is pretty much where I want it. So I'm going to hold down the command key, Control if you're on Windows, and just take the corner handle that I want to adjust, and it's not working. There we go. I'm just going to drag that, and then I'm going to do the same thing with these corner handles, and I'm going to line up the left edge of the paper. I'm going to line up the right edge of the paper. And then I'm going to pull over left and right. I might leave a little bit of border there so it looks like, yeah, I think I will. We'll leave a little bit of border left and right. And then hit OK. Now it looks like that photo sort of belongs on that parchment as opposed to, let me do a little history adjustment here, as opposed to the way we brought it in like that. And we just scaled it back. So there's a couple other little things that I think will help this. So it just looks like it's sitting on the paper right now. So I want to make it look like it's actually part of the paper. The first thing I'm going to do is look at some blending modes to see if I can get this to react with the paper underneath it a little bit better. I want it to look like it would look if it was actually painted on this paper. So here are your blending modes. They're in a drop-down list. And if you just move your cursor over it, you can kind of see the different effects. And I know that there are two of them that are going to give me interesting effects. The first one, and the one I'm probably going to use, is multiply. So this is normal. Actually, let me take a couple of snapshots. I have that one. Let me change to multiply, and I'll go to my history palette, take another snapshot, and then I'm going to change this to screen and take another snapshot. So this is where we started, and you can see the difference between that and multiply. Multiply now looks like the base, the color of that paper is actually influencing the color of the image. So it looks like it belongs there, like it was actually painted on there. Screen gives me a completely different look. It's kind of cool. It's a faded look, like this, you know, had been, I don't know, an old scroll that had faded. But I think the multiply one is the one I'm going to go with. And that's pretty good, but I think one last thing might even take it over the top. I'm going to put a layer mask on that layer, and I'm going to take a paintbrush, 100% black, because if I'm painting on a white layer mask, if I paint with black, I'm going to be hiding these areas. And let me see if I have a paintbrush in here. I have a few that might work. Let's try this one. I'm going to increase the size of the paintbrush by using either the right bracket key makes the brush larger, the left bracket key makes it smaller. And I'm just going to come down the edge of this photograph. I actually do all 4 edges. And I'm just going to kind of take that hard edged, I'm going to come into the image a little bit. I'm going to take the hard edge away. And this is a little time consuming, but like if I just click and drag, it doesn't quite do what I want. You have to really treat this more like it's a sponge and just click and release, or if you're using a pen, tap and release. But you want to randomize it a little bit. Like I might come in and do a little bit more, a little touch of the brush in on the interior a little bit more. But the main thing is to get rid of that sharp, hard line, that edge that is right on, it's a telltale sign that I have this perfectly rectangular image. After a while using a mouse and doing this, you start to get cramps in your hands because it's just a little bit. This is why I love the tablet rather than a mouse. And then, like I said, I might even come in and do a few random brush strokes throughout here. And now it has a little bit of a more, the edge effect kind of gives it a little bit more. And then we might even pull the opacity of the whole thing down to make it look like, maybe not quite that much, but just to make it look like it's a little more faded on the parchment. So those techniques, and again, like I said, what Chris did on his last week is what sparked the idea here, is I just wanted you guys to be aware of the transformation tool. So the assignment for next week is going to be to do some type of picture-in-picture. And whether you use this type of a transformation or something that's a little more like what we did in the generational family picture, either way is fine. But I just wanted you to see this. The more complicated you make it, the more interesting it can be. But just be careful. I would rather see a good job of the squared version of this than a bad job of the transformed version of it. And this one would require a little bit more work to make it look the way I want it to, but just wanted to give you the idea, the concept for how that works. Let me close this up. And let's see if there was. So we have a couple of other things here. Yeah, we did talk about this earlier in this class, so let's go ahead. I'll show you this as well. Now, these are completely unrelated techniques, but there are some that don't take a lot of time to discuss. We're not going to build an assignment around any of these, but they're things that you should probably know. So I think it was Haley's image, and I know she's left us, but her image with the saturation is kind of why I wanted to come in and do this. So if we have an image like this, and this happens a lot, where I have an image or I have to take images in the summertime, but people, I know that as a client, these people want a picture in the fall, but either they're not available in the fall, or there's a very limited, very narrow window, literally like about a 2-week window in the fall where the color is really good and where the weather is really good, and trying to fit all of those people that wanted a nice fall picture just doesn't pan out. So I had to come up with a way to kind of fake that a little bit, and usually this works really way better on an image that might be at the front edge of fall where a little bit of color is there already, and you're just augmenting it. But you can really do it even in a situation like this. And it's a really simple technique. I'm just going to add a hue and saturation adjustment layer, and you can find that either in the pop-up in the bottom of the layers palette, hue and saturation here, or you can find it under the image menu, image adjustments, hue and saturation, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Command U or Control U on Windows. And so it brings up, oh no, I'm sorry, this one under image, it's not an adjustment layer. You have to go to layer, new adjustment layer, hue and saturation. That's the adjustment layer. And so we can really have some funky fun with this by just taking the saturation slider and doing all sorts of bizarre things to it and getting these almost, this is what it would look like if you shot this with color infrared film. Infrared is, the infrared film was very difficult to work with because infrared light focuses on a different plane than visible light does. So you actually had to focus your camera so that the image that you saw in the viewfinder was slightly out of focus in order for it to be in focus in infrared light. But you would get all these really funky colors depending on the you know, the original colors. Sometimes you got something more like that, sometimes a little more in the blue range. But we're not going to work in the master channel. We're not going to adjust all these colors. All we want to do is affect the greens and yellows. It's primarily, believe it or not, the yellows, as much green as there is here. So if I click the drop down menu and go to yellows and then start to adjust that slider, you can see all the warmth that starts to come into these leaves and into the trees. Don't worry right now about the grass or the lake. We're going to adjust that in a second. Then I'll go to the greens and kind of play with the same thing. You don't want to go in this direction and you don't want to go too far in that direction, but just a little bit down to kind of match those greens up with the reds that are already there. And then saturation wise, you can play, it's probably going to be back in the yellows where we're going to play with the saturation. If you oversaturate, it tends to look a little bit fake, but if you undersaturate a little bit, that's usually a little bit better. Now, because this is an adjustment layer, it already has a layer mask, and that's what I'm going to use to bring back the color in the areas that needs to be. And I'm going to change back to a standard brush. I'm not going to paint the effect out entirely because at 100%, if I do, you see what happens is that that green lake does not match the scene at all because the reflection of the of those orange trees should be there. But if I go to about 50%, and I'm not being overly careful here, I would obviously have to be a little more careful to create this effect, but I'm just going to paint about 50% of that color off of the water and off of a little bit of the grass around as well. Again, I'm on a layer mask, so I can easily add back in anything if I feel I need to. That concrete should probably be natural, so I'm going to take all of that color out. And let's just look at what I did. So that's with the layer mask disabled. That's with it on. So maybe I'll switch my foreground and background colors and add a little bit of that brown color back to the grass, just a little bit. And overall, I mean, that's pretty close. You can continue to play with it with the different colors that are available to you here. We don't have much of a blue sky to play with in this image, so there's not much to do there. I do have one that does, however, and you'll see how it pretty much completely leave that blue sky alone. So we're going to do the same technique, hue and saturation. Go to the yellows first, pull that back, go to the greens, which is primarily your foreground, and pull that back. And then you can go into the blue areas if you want and, you know, oversaturate, undersaturate, change the hue a little bit. You can really make it look alien. This is sort of Eva, what your sky looked like a little bit. Get down into, you know, some of these really abnormal colors. But primarily, if I'm going to do this effect and try to make it look natural or as natural as possible, I'm just going to leave that alone. And even the reflection changes in the water, it doesn't really affect the people. There's some people over here on the right-hand side. If it does, I can mask it out on them, but it really didn't have a ton of effect on them because the color ranges that we affected weren't skin tones or the clothing that they were wearing for the most part. So that stayed pretty much the way it was. I think this is, trying to remember where this is. It's in Ohio. Is it Bark Camp? I can't remember. Yeah, I don't remember. There's a rock formation down at the very end of this, off a little bit off of the path, that I had to go down and shoot a rock climber climbing up those rocks, and that's how I found this spot. But just kind of a fun, cute little technique, something to play with. This is another image that would benefit from it. Again, it's there are no people or anything here to worry about, but it is going to affect the fence in the foreground. But you can kind of go over the top a little bit more on an image like this. Maybe pull the saturation up instead of down. And then just, again, take a brush and mask it off of the areas where you don't want it. You have to be a little careful, because if you're going to take it off like this, if you're going to take it all off, there are some areas inside that fence that are going to show through. This is really not easy to do with a mouse. So it would require a little bit extra of, going in at a higher magnification with a smaller brush and painting the effect off of the fence, but leaving it in the green area inside. But you kind of get the idea. We're just going from summer to fall here is all we're doing. So I think I'm going to hold it there. There was one other thing we could look at, but I don't want to muddy the waters too much. The last thing that we looked at, again, is not going to be part of the assignment or anything. I just wanted you to see it. The assignment is going to be to do some type of picture-in-picture. Use your imagination. Again, Chris, I hate the fact that you already probably had the best example of that, but I'm confident you can come up with something else. Keep the humor in it if it works, if that's the direction you want to go, or make it a little more dark and moody like some of the images were this week. But I just kind of want to see what you come up with in doing a technique like that. Next week, we will meet normally. The following week, we will not. The following week, there will be a video posted, a video instruction for you to watch. So the assignment that you get, not this week will be due next week, it'll be normal, but next week's assignment, you're going to have 2 weeks to do, because the week that I won't be available, we won't be doing a critique or anything. So you get an extra week on the assignment. And we're getting down there, guys. We only have we only have 3 more classes like this. Then we have a review, and then we have a final. So we're actually we only have 2 more like this, because 2 weeks from now I won't be here and it'll be a video instruction. So we're getting towards the end. Just looking to see if there's any notes or anything on here I need to be aware of. No, we're in good shape here. All right, so it's almost 6:30, so it's about time to roll out anyway. Any questions at all on what we're doing for next week? Sound simple enough? So again, I'll get this video posted as soon as possible. It'll be Saturday at the earliest. It takes a couple of days for some reason for YouTube to process this out. It uploads in about 25 minutes, and then it takes 2 days for them to process it and have it ready to actually view. But as soon as it is, I will send the link out to that. I will post the assignment actually as soon as I finish here, as soon as we sign off. So it'll be ready to go. If you have any questions, problems, difficulties, comments, let me know. if you have any extra cash, you can let me know that too. Just leave that somewhere in a mailbox where I can find it. Other than that, have fun, and let's see what you guys come up with for this assignment. All right, we'll see you in a week.